Chapter 8, Food Service. Our learning objectives today is cooking destroys pathogens when the right time and temperature are reached. Identifying the correct minimum internal cooking temperatures, describing verification and thermometer use, and then applying hot and cold holding and serving rules to keep food safe, and then recognizing when food must be discarded. So we're going to identify the correct minimum internal cooking temperatures of all the foods that we cook, describe the verification and thermometer use, apply hot and cold holding techniques and serving rules that we have, and recognizing when food has to be discarded. So with our general cooking principles, when we cook things, it is the final kill step for most pathogens, most of those bad bugs. We use calibrated probe thermometers so that we make sure that the core internal temperature that we're taking the temperature of is to where it has to be for that particular protein or that particular food item. We measure at the thickest part and away from bones and fat, because both bones and fat can actually give you an off reading where you won't get the exact reading of the meat that's going to be consumed. Always check multiple spots on large items to make sure that it's not unevenly cooking. Some factors that can affect cooking: the size and thickness of the food, the type of the equipment we're using, from regular conventional ovens or convection ovens that have the fan that create more pressure of that heat on the food, microwave ovens, steam and dry heat convection, if we're using combi ovens. All of those things react differently to our foods. Product density and composition, and then the starting temperature of the food as well. If I'm starting that steak and it's just come out of the fridge at, say, 38 degrees versus it sitting out for a few minutes and it might be 45 degrees, it will change the cooking dynamic. Let's take a look at the minimum internal temperatures we must cook our foods to, along with the times that we are to actually take that temperature to ensure that we're getting accurate readings. So we have poultry. It's all the way up at the very top, 165, but that also includes anything which is stuffed, any kinds of foods which are stuffed, whether it's meats, pastas, anything else. If we're reheating any TCS foods for hot holding, it must hit 165, and then any stuffed fish, poultry, any of those stuffed items, 165. When we look at ground meats, so we've got some ground pork, ground beef, any of those kinds of things. Anything that's been injected, anything that's been mechanically tenderized. So meaning if we literally get like a shoulder of pork and we're stabbing it with a knife to go and kind of break down some of the sinews that are in there because it's a tough piece of meat. Anything like that, if we have damaged the meat in any kind of way, stabbed anything into it, injected any kind of seasonings or tenderizers into it, now it must be cooked to 155. That includes ground seafood as well, and then shell eggs for hot holding. Remember, we've talked about this a couple of times. When we've got shell eggs that are going to go on a buffet, we must cook those to at least 155. Then if you look down close to the bottom of this one, just to talk about eggs again, if we are serving the eggs immediately, 145. Okay, because there's less risk there because there's no time involved. Then back up to the top, we've got our seafood, so our fin fish, our shellfish and crustaceans, 145. And then steaks, chops, so whole pieces of meat that have not been tenderized or damaged in any way, beef, pork, veal, lamb, 145. And then whole roasts. Those have to be roasted up to 145. Basically, it's a whole piece of meat, kind of like a steak, but a whole lot bigger, right? So that's beef, pork, lamb, veal. But look at the hold time where we're going to make sure that we hit that temperature. 4 minutes. It's not 15 seconds. It's not a quick check. We have to make sure that it maintains at 145 for 4 minutes, just to make sure, because you're dealing with a significantly larger piece of meat. And then down to the very much less risky foods, fruits, vegetables, grains, when they're being hot held, commercially processed, ready to eat foods that are reheated, So these are all very low risk foods. Those only have to be taken out of the temperature danger zone. Right? We don't keep our foods in the temperature danger zone. Okay, now right here, you do not have to memorize all of these numbers. Okay, so this is something that generally chefs would look up when they're about to actually cook the piece of meat. But say if I have a whole side of beef that I want to cook, and I want to cook it so that it's not medium well or well done, I actually want to slightly undercook it so that way it's nice and juicy and tender. If I've got like a nice prime rib or something like that, this enables me to do that. So if you look at the very first temperature measure, 130 Fahrenheit, and I have to hold it at 130 Fahrenheit. It doesn't mean I cook it for 112 minutes. It means I cook it till I hit 130, and then I hold it at 130. Is 130 degrees inside the temperature danger zone?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Where does the temperature danger zone top out at? 135, right? So I can technically, legally, and with all concerns out of the window, I can cook that roast beef to 130 degrees, even though it is technically inside the temperature danger zone. But I must hold it at 130 degrees for 112 minutes. It's like, but it's still in the temperature danger zone. You keep saying can't have things in the temperature danger zone, right? So let me explain a little. So this is where we are killing the bad bugs, the pathogens. We're killing them with heat, but also time in that heat. So in our classroom today, 70 degrees, quite pleasant. It's a nice place to be. If you go out on a hot summer day around here, 95 degrees, maybe even 100 degrees. It's uncomfortable, right? I'm sweating. It's hot. If I go to Death Valley in California, hot summer day, 125 degrees. In the shade, it is uncomfortable. I can tell you when I've been there a couple of times, I've been there, when you get out of your air-conditioned car to go and do some sightseeing, you can't wait to get back into your air-conditioned car again. It is hot. It feels like you're in an oven. It is uncomfortable. And you have this, your brain automatically just tells you, I'm in a dangerous situation. I can't survive in this situation, not under shade and not protected for very long. That's 125 degrees. That's where we go and give it an extra 5 on top of there, and that's where bacteria, after 112 minutes of that heat, relentless heat, that's when they'll die. Okay? It's literally the minimum of where we can take this, so that way, but holding them at that temperature long enough that we literally will torture them to death. Okay? That we will eventually kill them all off because they can't take it any longer. It's just too hot for too long. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So, but now if I'm okay with cooking my meat to 135, then I only have to hold it for 36 minutes now, right? Or if I'm going to take it up to 140, then I only have to hold it there for 12 minutes. Because the hotter it gets, the more bacteria I'm just killing off anyway, right? Every degree that I go up, I'm killing more bacteria. The only thing is I'm also making my meat more well done, so that's where we find that balance. I can cook it to where it's like a medium rare kind of temperature, but I have to hold it at that temperature for a long time. Okay? Microwave cooking. So we have to make sure, because microwaves generally tend to unevenly cook foods, I have to make sure that we take care of evening it out. So I have to rotate or stir it halfway through cooking, cover to retain the moisture, because otherwise all the steam goes out and then things start drying out rapidly in there. Check the temperature in multiple spots because it's always uneven, and then let it stand for 2 minutes with that lid on to let it just stand so that the heat can more evenly distribute throughout the food. We're always cooking and reheating foods in a microwave to 165. If you have an exam question that says you're doing in a microwave oven, the minimum requirement in microwave ovens is 165, and that's because they so unevenly cook. And that's why we don't really cook in microwave ovens. Well, we don't as professionals. But if we're doing anything like that in a microwave, everything must hit 165 just to make sure that nothing is going to be underheated. Serving temperature standards: hot food 135 or above, cold food 41 or below. Using sneeze guards for self-service. So like for our buffets, we always have sneeze guards. A sneeze guard is not going to stop, if someone sneezes directly onto the food, it's not going to stop that sneeze from ending up on the food. The actual idea of it is, it's trying to shield as badly, as much as possible what's coming out, because when you're just speaking, there is spit and saliva that's coming from your mouth just by speaking. Some people more than others, right? But that's there to try and eliminate as much of that as possible. We should replace utensils on that buffet every 4 hours. Why would we do that? Like utensils, like serving spoons, tongs, things. Why do we? Right, because those pathogens might have been multiplying on there. 4 is the magic number for most things, right? So we want to replace them out so that way when someone dips that spoon in there, they're not contaminating that food. So holding without temperature control, let's go over these items again as well. Hot food up to 4 hours if it started off at least 135. Cold food up to 6 hours if it started at 41 or below, and it never exceeds 70 Fahrenheit, right? If it does, 4 hours, okay? And then we must always mark the discard time carefully and clearly on that packaging, because the fact is there's no temperature control. So it's all about time, right? When we're doing this without any temperature control, it's all about time. Preventing contamination during service, using clean, sanitized utensils for each food item. Never touch ready-to-eat foods with bare hands. Handle plates and glassware by the edges or the base, not around the area where people are going to consume from. Storing serving utensils handles up above food. So if I've got a buffet, and then I'm going to have separate tongs, ladles, spoons on every single item, so there's no cross-contamination or cross-contact. What does cross-contact mean? What's that to do with? Allergens, exactly. Right, so we want to make sure every single one of them has a utensil, and that the utensil handle should stick up above the actual product. If it doesn't, then you need to get a bigger utensil. That's why we have serving spoons, and we have other smaller spoons that we don't use for service on buffets. It must be sticking up out of the product. And then store silverware handles up as well, so that hands don't contact the eating portion. For knives, forks, spoons, the handles should always be sticking up, not like the tines of the forks or the blades or the bowl of the soup spoons or anything like that. So self-service areas like buffets, we should protect food with the sneeze guards or covers. Provide clean plates for each visit. No one should ever go back to a buffet with the same plate. They may say, oh, I'm just trying to save you from doing some dishes. Doesn't matter. I don't want something to drip off the bottom of your plate because you were stacking your plates up before. I don't want anything to drip off by accident and contaminate the food that's on my buffet. Get a clean plate. It takes us 10 seconds to go and clean a plate. Doesn't take long at all. Make sure that all food is labeled up correctly. Ice is used for the display equals consumption ice, right? We're never recycling ice to go and use on something different is the main point on this. Tableware and utensils, single service items must be stored protected. Got to make sure that nothing's going to drip on them or anything like that. Wrapped silverware or handle up presentation, replace preset items if guests do not use them. So if you have a table that's set for 5 people, when I seat a table on there, if there's only 4 people that sit down, then I have 2 choices. I can either pick up that extra place setting now, or I leave it while the people are dining there, and afterwards that's all dumped out, right? All the silverware, napkins have to be cleaned or thrown out. It has to be done as though those people actually used it, because I can't trust a customer to sit at a table and not interfere with something that might be on that table. Transporting food for off-site service, using insulated containers to keep food hot, 135 or above or 41 or below. Label containers with product names and use-by times. Clean and sanitize transport equipment between uses as well. Then we have time and temperature monitoring. Check the internal temperatures at regular intervals. Use calibrated thermometers. Keep written logs. discard food outside safe limits as well. Okay, let's look at some questions. So chicken breast must reach a minimum internal temperature of what? 165. Roast beef cooked at 145 must be held for how long?
4 minutes.
4 minutes, exactly. Cold time and temperature control for safety food held without temperature control, which never reaches 70 Fahrenheit, must be discarded after how many hours? 6 hours is what we're allowed, yes. Hot TCS food held without temperature control must be discarded after how long? 4 hours. So we have to verify cooking temperatures for all menu items, provide calibrated thermometers, train our staff to record the temperatures, and then correct unsafe practices immediately as managers with our manager certification. So just to finish up, we follow the food code cooking temperatures and times exactly. We don't stray away from it, and as long as we do it exactly every time, it's hard to poison people. We monitor temperatures continuously during hot holding and service and cold holding and service. Prevent contamination through clean utensils and barriers in between things like sneeze guards. Discarding any food that falls outside of safe limits. It's not worth risking. That's chapter 8.